Καλησπέρα και από μένα. Ο Κώστας Γιαννακίδης πήρε την καρέκλα του και έφυγε. Εγώ ήρθα με το βάφρο μου. Ανεβάσανε με τον Κωνσταντίνο Δασκαλάκη πολύ ψηλά τον πύχη. Θα προσπαθήσουμε να τον κρατήσουμε ψηλά. Εγώ είμαι ο Λουκάς Βελιδάκης, είμαι δημοσιογράφος και μαζί μας έχουμε τον Hunter-Torricke. Ενδεχομένως να μην γνωρίζετε το όνομά του, αλλά είναι από τους κορυφαίους πρώην insider των Big Tech. Ο Hunter-Torricke είναι πρώην επικεφαλής επικοινωνίας και σύμβουλος σε Google DeepMind. Ήταν για ένα διάστημα το δεξί χέρι του Mark Zuckerberg στην Facebook και συνεργάστηκε με τον Demis Hassabis στην Google. Όπως σας είπα, είναι ένας από τους κορυφαίους insider. Τώρα έφυγε μάλλον το 2025 από την Google και ίδρυσε ένα δικό του οργανισμό, τον οποίο τον ονομάζει Center for Tomorrow. Η βασική του θέση είναι ότι η τεχνητή νοημοσύνη μπορεί να οδηγήσει σε μαζική ανατροπή στο πεδίο της εργασίας, σε ανισότητες και σε γεωπολιτική αστάθεια και συγκέντρωση ισχύως. Ενώ ταυτόχρονα ο ίδιος θεωρεί και επιχειρηματολογεί γι' αυτό ότι δεν υπάρχει κάποιο σχέδιο. Η συζήτησή μας θα γίνει στα αγγλικά, απλά έκανα τον πρόλογο εγώ στα ελληνικά. Dex Hunter, welcome to the Κύκλος conference. I did my introduction in Greek. I tried to say to the people who you are, and welcome. You have a good sound?
Great to be here.
So, without further ado, I would like to ask you the question that you get to ask normally all the time. It is always the first question you get. You spent years inside the institutions that sold the optimistic story of technology. You have said that you only told half of the truth about it. And when you now warn about the AI disruption, are you correcting a mistake or simply telling the other half of the story?
I would say both. Technology is something that should be deeply hopeful. And if you think back to where the tech industry was, a decade ago, 15 years ago, when I started my career in US big tech, what a different moment in the world that was. It seems almost incredible to think back on it now, right? And think that people like Elon Musk were deeply hopeful figures. There was somebody who was talking about humanity and building electric vehicles and spacecraft. And these were the sorts of things which were optimistic bets on the future of humanity. But clearly what has happened is that the industry has evolved in a bunch of ways that are no longer aligned with human values, and certainly not values that I identify with. And what I'm trying to do now is very much focus on what does a very different agenda look like for how we manage technology in our societies that ensures that we can get to a good future in a world where much more powerful technology is coming that will radically change our lives in ways most people have yet to fully fathom.
But what was actually the other half of the truth? Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. The story that so many people tell about technology when they come from the tech industry side, when they're innovators and entrepreneurs, is technology changes the world. And it's a story that's all about the positive applications of that technology. You see that story being told every day in the AI ecosystem about AI. These are technologies that might boost our economic growth, they might cure diseases, they might transform our public services and so on. That's all possibly true. But there's another half of the story, which is the world changes technology. These things don't just show up in a vacuum. They certainly don't show up in some perfect society. And the way to think about it, right? If AI didn't exist, how many people think things are generally going well in the world right now? Very few. We have many, many crises now on multiple fronts all at once, economically, societally, geopolitically, climatically. And all of those dysfunctions in our societies, in our systems, will compound and be massively accelerated and exacerbated by artificial intelligence. And that means we need to tell a very different story now about what the future might look like. It's not going to be one where AI just neatly solves all our problems. we will have to solve many more problems to achieve the full potential of AI.
I'd like to bring to our conversation a term that it's quite new, actually. It is the job apocalypse. The Economist used it at his cover story last week. I read, a little bit before we started this conversation, an article from the New York Times saying that 7 out of 10 Americans believe that they are not going to find a job. 1 out of 3, they have some fears that they are going to lose their jobs. What's your comment? What's your take on that?
You've seen how precarious life has become for millions of people, including many people from previously prosperous, stable, middle-class jobs in economies all over the world, including very advanced economies. And, I'm based in the UK. Youth unemployment is, at some of the highest levels ever in history. We have more than 1 million young people who are unemployed. And you get stories all the time now about graduates who are very highly qualified sending in 100-200 CVs trying to find a job. And this is just a taste of what is to come. You are seeing much more advanced AI systems, which are absolutely having effects on the labor force. And it isn't necessarily roles have been automated or replaced by an AI. But what you are seeing is the most high-performing, innovative companies are absolutely getting huge economic advantages from using AI. And they are out-competing more stately incumbents who have not chosen to innovate fast enough. And so this is something now which is really having impacts in ways that are both seen and unseen on economic growth, on jobs, on productivity. In many cases, the official statistics do not fully reveal what the future looks like and where this is going. But certainly, we are heading towards a world where the leader of every single major AI lab, whether it's Demis Hassabis or Sam Altman, Dario Modi, all of them are prophesizing that we will arrive at artificial general intelligence, human-level intelligence in machines at some point in the next decade. And most of them believe that is actually close to probably about 5 years from now. And you don't actually have to ever end up as AGI to have very, very severe social and economic disruption. And so I think it's no surprise that people are really worrying now about what the future looks like. All of those worries come after many years where people have already seen falling living standards, stagnating wage growth, all the economic insecurities of everything from the global financial crisis to the global pandemic. And this just looks like the latest disaster that's waiting to fall on top of our populations.
May I ask you then, which professions are first in the blast radius? I mean, who should already be worried?
Any profession or role where your value is mostly based on just knowing things that might be objectively true is absolutely going to be highly vulnerable to automation. And this is where you're already seeing, for example, in certain industries, the number of graduate roles in things like accounting and law, certain finance roles, all of those jobs are going down by double digits for new graduates. But I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. You're seeing this effect, unfolding in lots of very different parts of industries. You look at communications and marketing roles, for example. I spent a lot of my early career in communications. This is something where you're absolutely seeing a very small number of communicators who are able to operate AI first. Many other people are now seeing their jobs absolutely vulnerable to automation or with a maximum sort of cap on your growth prospects within the industry. So in a way, I think we're going to see the effects of advanced AI on almost every industry. And certainly it will begin, I think, with professions and roles that might have historically been considered very, very secure.
Like journalism, for instance, because, I have to remind you that I asked you a question when we had the interview, like a few months ago, what about my profession? Would you like to comment on that? The future of journalism? Because you are in the field of communication too. So.
Yeah, and in a way, journalism is a perfect microcosm of how the effects might play out across other industries. There are no doubt a certain set of roles which are not high quality journalism jobs. And these are things where it's articles and content that is almost commoditized, churning out lots of clickbaity type stories. These are the sorts of things where absolutely those will be vulnerable to automation. On journalism, though, I do think that the way I think about journalism, it's much more than the writing. The writing is actually relatively the less challenging, interesting part for many journalists. It's all about cultivating relationships. It's about unearthing truth. It's about discovering something new and adding to the treasure trove of knowledge for our societies about what is taking place. And that is something which AI right now is not good at. Absolutely, I think the arrival of generative AI should be a wake-up call to journalists. If you want to really preserve your role in a future that will be shaped by AI, you, in a way, need to go back to what makes journalism truly meaningful. What are the things that have always made it meaningful? It is ultimately about human relationships and that search for truth. It is going to be less about just trying to churn out content.
Let me bring the conversation now closer to where I am, and not you, unfortunately. Next time, we would like you to be here in Greece. For a country like, my country, Greece, which is a relatively smaller country, without a frontier AI industry and dependent on foreign infrastructure, what does adaptation realistically look like?
Adaptation is going to be, first of all, recognizing that the future will be very significantly shaped by innovations that will not be developed in Greece. You are seeing the United States and China powering ahead with advanced AI and many of the other innovations that are coming out of their leadership in the deep tech ecosystem. And what worries me in particular, not just for Greece, but for Europe and for countries all over the world, is that in the next decade, as we get to the more and more powerful AI systems, but also other technologies that are made accessible through the breakthroughs driven by AI, commercial quantum computing, nuclear fusion technology, humanoid robotics, these are things which we will be dependent on the US and China for access to. And it is unlikely that we will get access to those technologies except in exchange for something. We are going to be asked to hand over our minerals, to rewrite our trade rules, to rewrite our societies to favor the interests of Washington or Beijing. And I do not think that is a good future for our nations. I do not think we should take orders from the US and from China. And so when it comes to thinking about access to systems and compute power and infrastructure, first of all, we should be looking to internationalize that conversation with other allied nations, with other powers who are in exactly the same position as us. There are many other nations who have the values that we care about, to democracy and to autonomy and human rights and all of these things which we want to hold on to. How can we share our capacity? How can we align our rules so that together we collectively have leverage in a future where the US and China will have this kind of power? Mark Carney gave a speech at Davos, which was exceptional earlier this year, and he said, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. We need to figure out, by aligning our rules and cooperating on things like infrastructure, can we get a seat at the table collectively? This is why some of the AI sovereignty strategies, they won't work if you think about it as just self-sufficiency. There is no way that any single country is going to be able to generate the kind of resources necessary to survive an AI future on its own, but we don't need to be doing that. We have other allies. The other piece I would say is absolutely it is about how quickly can we transform and modernize all of our institutions, both businesses, government, how communities operate, to take advantage of AI so that we hold on to our national advantages right now. And so if you think about it, there are many fantastic companies, innovators, pockets of creativity in Greece, in other societies. They are now potentially vulnerable to global challengers who will be using AI to take their goods and services to the world. How can we ensure that people and talent in Greece and other places are absolutely making use of these technologies in the meantime to hold on to their advantages, to do even more amazing things, which absolutely can contribute to growth and our quality of life. So there's a duality of the moment where we need to use this technology. We can't just pretend it doesn't exist. We must be competitive in it, but we also need to have systemic solutions to the future threats that our societies will face.
We have only 2 minutes remaining, so I will skip a lot of questions I had for you, and I'll go to the end, and I will mention that you create the Center for Tomorrow. Would you like to tell us a little bit why and what's that?
There is an AI governance conversation that big tech has driven globally for the last several years. It is something that will not solve the vast majority of problems our societies face. Big tech has distorted that conversation in order to favor its own interests. Most of the challenges of the future are societal problems that require societal solutions. There is no technical fix or technical regulation that is going to ensure that we have good jobs and a good quality of life for our populations 10, 15 years from now. There is no algorithmic fix that ensures that the same advances in intelligence will not also turbocharge the largest military rearmament in history. So these are things now, the center is very focused on illuminating the breakthrough thinking we need systemically to get to the good future. There are many sort of utopian thinkers in big tech who pretend that this technology will just automatically solve our problems. I don't think that's a sophisticated theory of change. We need to have a plan and a vision for how we ensure that this technology really does serve the good life for all of our people. And if we do that, then I think we end up in a much better future than the current one, which promises to enrich a very narrow sliver of the world.
Hunter-Torricke, thank you very much for your insightful thoughts. Good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.